Greetings, YouTube. Today I'm going to talk about The Time Machine. And no, I did not actually pay $5 for this. I think I picked it up for $2 at a yard sale. This is the 2002 remake, and I grew up on the George Pal 1960 version of this film. I don't ever remember how old I was when the first time I saw it, but I can never not remember that movie. It's like it was from my birth that I've seen it. It was charming, and it was sweet, and it was G-rated, and it was Disney-like in many ways. It was 4-color comics, and it's a classic. And I don't think that this film is ever going to dethrone the original George Pal version from that position of being the classic film, The Time Machine. But this version has a great deal more depth and texture. It has, quite frankly, better acting. I'm not sure if the writing and the storyline are any better, but I believed that this film was immersed in the 19th century much more thoroughly than I believe the George Pal version was. They seem to have taken much greater level of detail into making sure that the environments that they were filming in, the street shots, the costuming, the horse and buggies, even the Stanley Steamer they had in a number of scenes, which was very cool. And apparently it ran very well. I thought that was interesting. And it was an original Stanley Steamer. It was a thoroughly enjoyable film. My wife and I saw this originally when it came out. I think we saw it near the end of its first run. We were bored one day while she was at school, and we went to a local theater and saw it. Kind of out of the blue, we just kind of, let's go to the movies kind of thing. And I remember I wasn't wowed by the movie when I saw it the first time, but I watched it recently, last week, with commentary, and about the director, producer, and I think the editors involved in the commentary. And it was quite interesting to listen to. And what I found fascinating for myself is that as I'm watching this, and I've got the commentary, and I'm listening to it, and I enjoy that kind of thing, I find myself getting drawn into the story. There were actual points where I wanted to stop. I didn't want to listen to the commentary. I wanted to know what was going on in the story, because it had been long enough since I had seen it that all the details were not in my memory. So I was becoming engaged in the film to a deeper level than I was the first time I saw it. I guess I appreciated it more this time around than I did the first time. Maybe I'd been comparing it too much to the original George Pal version to really appreciate it the first time I saw it. It's possible. But there are still things about this that don't make any sense. In the film, for some strange reason, the moon comes apart, which is weird. Which causes a major disaster, and of course destroys the civilization as we know it. The main character eventually discovers that the reason he can't save his lady love by going back in time and trying to save her is that she's dead, and you can't alter time. You can't change the fact that she's died. And then, after having learned this from Jeremy Irons, who in his role in the film is listed as Uber Morlock. He's the overmind of the Orlocks, a psychic that controls them. Though it leaves a lot to question about how their society works on a number of levels. But he slips into the future for briefly, then he comes back and saves the day kind of thing. And when he goes to the future for the last time, he sees that the Morlocks have won. The Morlocks have taken over the world. They've turned it into a living hell. And he goes back into to save the Eloi, and his intent is to change the future, to prevent the Morlocks from taking over. But the Morlocks have already told him that you can't change the future. So while he may have a pleasant time and may enjoy himself with his Eloi friends until he gets old and dies, he's ultimately going to fail. Now, the Eloi culture is much deeper in this, much richer. It makes a lot more sense. They're an actually functioning culture. There are things about it which are never explained, which is good, because it leaves mystery. But why do the adult males all shave their heads? You know, why what do the tattoos they have mean, kind of thing? You know, those kind of things are left as questions, and that's a good thing. But the structure between the Elois and the Morlocks, while making more sense in this version than it made in the George Pal version, still doesn't make any sense. Why do the Morlocks hunt the Eloi? They could just hunt animals. You know, it's not hard to understand that. You don't need to be hunting the Eloi for this. It's a weird dynamic. Why do they live underground in horribly despicable conditions when they've got lots of ability to generate metals and technology to build giant machinery, and yet they don't build themselves a better, cleaner, safer place to live? That makes no sense. Even our ancestors, using nothing but stone tools and copper, made much better underground and surface level dwellings than these Morlocks did. It was a mystery. And there's like, you know, just little things like that all over the place. That, you know, like the computer that the main character meets in 2030 is still around 800,000 years in the future. That's just insane. No piece of technology is going to last that long, let alone the software on it can still function after 800,000 years. And some of the Eloi speak English because they've preserved these stone words from famous buildings, and Tiffany was there, Grand Central Station was there. Now, there is no possible way that these stones would have survived 800,000 years. They would have worn away to nothing, all right? They're not going to be here. But if they were, there is no way that they could still speak the language. They might be able to read the language, just as we can read Latin. But no one alive today knows what Latin sounds like. Nobody. And that was only 1,600 years ago when it died out. Okay? So, 800,000 years in the future, nobody's speaking English, even if they could read it. It would have been a much more complex movie, though, if he had to keep writing notes down and showing them to people so he could communicate with them. And even then, they would have spoken, at best, pidgin English as opposed to his full fluency. So there are problems with this film, but the logical gaps in this film are actually smaller than the logical gaps in the George Pal version, but the George Pal version is still the classic, and still has a place in my heart. But this is a fun film. I enjoyed it. It was a good time. If you don't think about it too deeply, it will probably help you to enjoy it. But I recommend it to anyone that enjoys a decent, well thought out 19th century kind of steampunkish kind of a film, because this one really does suit that genre very well.